Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rainbow Talks here virtually at the University of Missouri St. Louis. I am your host, Harry Hawkins, the LGBTQ plus coordinator here at UMSL, and we're back today with another fabulous guest who is doing fabulous and outstanding things in the community, Jon Garrett. Jon is a composer, recording artist, and artistic director of the Gateway Men's Chorus. Jon, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Harry. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we were talking about before we started that Jon's in the ballroom there at the Centene Performing Center for Arts, or the name of the building. I think I just twisted it around, but it's a long name. It's a long name, but he's there in the ballroom, and I was like, what an appropriate place to be at
I
this
spent
time.
time in here.
Yeah, yeah. You should totally fake it and just be like, "Oh, this is my house. This is this is where I play piano." So, yes, yes. Well, Jon, I mean, just getting started off with you there in your ballroom, how have you been holding up during this, tumultuous time, and how has the pandemic changed your life personally and professionally?
Oh my goodness. That's a big question. I mean, uh, the pandemic it's crazy to use I don't know, maybe crazy is a bit of a fluff word, but it has caused a lot of craziness in our lives. But, with all of the changes and the inconveniences, there are also, I feel, a lot of positives. There are pros and cons to everything. I really believe that in life. Everything has a downside and an upside, you know? And that's one of kind of the foundations of my worldview, is that life doesn't go back and forth between good times and then bad times, good times, bad times. Life exists in the good and the bad at the same time, coexisting. So I think the pandemic has been a great lesson in that. It has completely turned all of our lives upside down, and yet it has forced us to find new ways to do things. It has awakened things in all of us that, in the hustle and bustle of life pre-pandemic, we were just sort of keeping under the surface or postponing, whatever. Things like cleaning the basement or organizing the closet. I mean, just little things like that. But those things, I really do believe, make a difference in our lives. And one of the things that the pandemic has shown me is that if I can continue to just carve out little bits of time to do things like that post-pandemic, how much better will my life be, and then I will be more able to help others. So that's to me one of the biggest things about this pandemic. It has been an awakening for me. Yes, all of the inconveniences and even the sort of this constant low grade and sometimes not so low grade fear that it's caused in a lot of us. I recently attended, I also teach at SLU, and we had a guest come in to do a clinic for the voice studio class. And she said something that I had never thought of before, and it moved me to tears. And it was this: we, even the most introverted of us, are social creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And psychologically, on a very deep level, we need human interaction.
Mm.
The pandemic has caused us to view everyone, even those that are closest to us, as a potential threat.
Mm. Boom.
This constant level of stress that's under the surface, it's subconscious. We are not even aware that every single person that we see walking down the street and every person who lives in our own home, we are subconsciously viewing as a potential threat. And that is in conflict with our need to embrace and be embraced. So, yeah, I think that that's one of one of the sort of insidious things that we all need to be aware of and proactive in combating is that underlying psychological stress that can easily turn into physiological stress and affect our lives, even if we're not so significantly impacted by the pandemic in the real world. You know, in my personal life, thankfully, SLU was able to convert to remote teaching last spring, right after spring break. Some summer work was impacted, but you know, I found other things to fill the gap. And then this fall, SLU is back in person with some really creative and innovative ways to keep the students safe, as I'm sure many other schools are. And I'm so impressed by my colleagues and by the organization there. GMC as well, and the Arts and Education Council, which manages the Centene here, has also been very proactive in ensuring that the people that we bring into these spaces can remain as safe as possible. There's no such thing as 100% safe.
Right.
It's all a calculated risk. However, there are things that we can do that can significantly decrease the risk. And I really value, and I'm so thankful that I get to align with these organizations that embrace those efforts. Otherwise, I feel this stress would be significantly greater than it is.
Mhm. You really, you touch on an interesting point that I was talking with someone yesterday and then someone today as well. When we talk about where is that line between, that fear, and then it gets into some possible like psychosomatic type of things and things like that. I'm putting on my old psychology hat that I don't wear too much distinctly anymore, but it's been, when I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, I said, it's even the most mundane of, I'm feeling a little down today. Should I be scared? Or then when you pause and reflect, it's like, well, I've had days like this before COVID. Or right now, a colleague of mine is under the weather and both of us are having similar symptoms. And, I realized until I watched the weather this morning, and for those of you who are watching who are not in the St. Louis area, is that we are actually having some of the smoke from the fires on the West Coast that's affecting our air quality. And I was like, that's probably why I am feeling very yuck right now. It's not COVID. And my colleague has been tested and she's like, I'm good. It's possibly the air quality's got me feeling really yuck right now, but it's that fear of just, I don't feel right. What's going on?
Yeah, the unknown creates doubt, and doubt creates fear. And there's just still so much that's not known. I mean, thankfully, there is a very clear list of symptoms that are associated with COVID, but so many of those symptoms could just be allergies, or as you said, environmental, or even just, turning the heat back on in our houses. That's going to cause all of our sinuses to go haywire for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the environment is just so uncertain that it's sort of weighing things down. And that's why, man, I'm so thankful. Last night we were able to start our 34th season with the men's chorus. And perhaps you want to get to men's chorus stuff later, but I just feel like that's such a bright spot. It brings me so much joy to be able to, in a very safe way, the safest possible way that we can come up with, bring a very small number of singers together with distancing and mask use and symptom pre-checks and temperature checks at the door and all that stuff. But for them to be able to make music together again, and then for them to be able to do it in and broadcast that to the rest of the choir who's at home participating over Zoom. It's just, to me, it's a real bright spot. in all of this uncertainty and heaviness that, you know, here's hoping. No one knows for sure, but I'm an eternal optimist. They'll plot me in my grave and I'll be saying, you know, I'll be optimistic even then. But, you know, this has got to come to an end. And when it does, the lessons we will have learned. Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I can't wait to move forward. But what that does not mean that I'm not thankful for right now, all these things considered, for all of the opportunities for growth and joy and connection, because they still exist.
Absolutely. They're out there. Those bright spots are out there and they're happening. And there's
Yeah.
so many great features. I've seen one of our local magazines that has unveiled a new section that they're going to be doing about how to still have fun in St. Louis during this time of like things you can still do. You know, I know. And I was like, that's a great idea, actually, to give us, yeah. And we'll get into some GMC stuff in a little bit. But before we go there, I think to start off, I mean, Jon, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, where were you born? Where were you raised? All of those things.
Sure. Okay, so let me see. You may have to help me keep me on track and help me stay condensed here, okay?
That's fine. Yeah.
All right, so I was born here in Missouri in a little town that a lot of people have heard of, but for a particular restaurant that's in this town. I was born in Sikeston, Missouri.
Oh, I wonder what happens there.
It's home of throwed rolls. You know, I discovered much later in life, they have a dish there. Now, don't gross out. This dish is called hog jowl.
Okay.
Hog jowl, right? But it's like the thickest, most perfect bacon.
Yeah.
Sorry, vegans, that you will ever put in your face.
Yep.
Oh, so good. Anyway, it's a good thing. Probably it's a good thing that I didn't discover it until my, you know, my mid-30s or whatever. Otherwise, I might weigh 400 pounds, but that's a different story. Anyway, I was born in Sikeston. I grew up in a tiny little town down in the boot heel of Missouri, that little southeast corner that looks like the heel of a boot. So the town I grew up in is called Lilburn, which no one's ever really heard of. But that is just a few miles west of a town that people have also heard of named New Madrid, which is famous for the New Madrid Fault. When I was a kid, we had these t-shirts that said, "It's our fault." Anyway.
Oh, wow.
You remember from childhood.
Yeah.
Anyway, my parents divorced when I was 8. My sister and I moved with my mom to Cape Girardeau, so a little up closer toward the big city, right? And after a couple of years, then she remarried and we moved here to St. Louis. Went to public school here in the St. Louis suburbs, and then attended a private Christian high school at a church that is actually still very much thriving in North County named Grace. Well, back then it was called Grace World Outreach Center. I believe now it's just called Grace Church. At their peak, they were like tens of thousands of people in this church. Anyway,
Oh, wow.
they had a school. They still have an elementary school, I believe. Anyway, I went to high school there, graduated there, and I met my my high school sweetheart there, and we fell in love, and we actually are both alums of St. Louis. We both graduated in 1993, and her with an education degree and myself with a BA in music. We got married, I think literally 2 days before we walked.
Oh, wow.
And let's see, and then I taught some high school for a year or something like that before taking a job as a music director at one of those large non-denominational churches. And I did that for about 20 years, 25 years. So did music there, and then production, and then let's see. Yeah, about 2 years ago we separated, and that sort of brings us to today. I have three beautiful daughters. They're all 6 years apart, which is kind of fun. They each got to kind of be a little bit of an only child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of the biographical timeline.
The journey, as they say. Yeah, part of the journey. So your daughters being 6 years apart, being the only child at different periods. So now, how do they all interact with each other now? Is it kind of?
They're so close. It's really wonderful. Yeah. I think the two younger ones would get at each other, for a period, but they're all very close now. And I mean, their mom and dad are in the middle of a divorce currently, and that will mature young people. So they've had to endure some hardship that I wish they had not had to endure, but it was unavoidable, and I think we're all doing our best to make the best of it and to help them to stay well-adjusted and happy.
Yeah, it's a transition. It's very much a change in things, and then learning the new family dynamics, especially. I always see you have me putting my psychology and counselor hat back on again today, so it's twice now. It's back on.
Your therapy session.
Yeah, so no, Rainbow Talks will not be anyone's therapy session. But, maybe for viewers, but not for the guests as far as that goes, unless they want it to be. But,
I can grab a couch and lay down in it, and you can.
I mean, it looks like you're gonna be tight on space in there, but maybe you could get a couch. Just maybe you could get a couch, as far as that goes. So, of course, that's an important thing. It's almost like I didn't even mention that in the run-up to it. We always want to say, like, we have an UMSL alumnus as a guest today, so that's an important thing. Of course, class of 1993, which was 5 years ago. So good things there as well. It's always good to have UMSL alums on the show. So what are your first memories, Jon, of the LGBTQ community?
Oh boy, first memories of the community. I think I would have to differentiate between sort of my first memories of LGBTQ people and the community, because I had experiences with LGBTQ people long before I became aware of the community. So to answer your question, I think my first legit experiences with the LGBTQ community are fairly recent. Because I lived much of my adult life in hiding, as it were, I had to be very careful, and I worked in some quite fundamental church culture. I had to be very careful, sort of not to tip my hand on that front. And so, it's really maybe just been in the last couple of years that I've had experiences with the community. And thankfully, I can say it's been life-changing. This community is, and again, life, good and bad, coexisting. So we won't, every community has those downsides, but I have experienced personally very few of them, and I feel that it's a community of acceptance and of love and of self-worth and of self-actualization. I feel that these are some of the wonderful attributes of the LGBTQ community, because we, like so many other targets of discrimination in our society, come from a place of being told we're wrong, we're not good enough, there's something wrong with us, and believing it And so the community has, I think, developed in part to inherently combat those detrimental psychological influences of society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of changes, a lot of changes just in the last, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, of just how much has changed in 10 years.
Absolutely.
Just how much and how fast, which is positive and also has some negative things when we move quickly like that. But it's just, yeah, at times it makes your head spin in a good way, that how much has changed, how the attitudes have changed, but also how much work is left. I mean, we're not done. That's always been the big thing I and other advocates talk about, is like, we didn't just reach a finish line and we're done and everything's perfect. I think anyone who knows what's going on in society right now knows that we are far from perfect on many, many, many things. And there's so much work to do. And I think, like, your story in particular, Jon, touches on a piece that I've talked about and possibly in previous episodes as well. I think so. That coming out is never like a one and done thing either. And it's not, and people come out at different stages of their life, and everyone has their own unique story. And that's what makes this tapestry of our community beautiful, is all of our stories of pain and then triumph. And I think your story is just another beautiful story in that tapestry that we have. We all get there at different times.
Yeah, I love this idea that you just touched on of, never being done. That's another real foundation of my worldview, is that perfection is not attainable, nor is it desirable, because the minute we think, okay, it's perfect, we actually stop growing.
Yep.
There's this sort of a line where we can say, okay, yes, this is at a good place. But I heard years ago this idea that, it's not like it's a new concept, but the second law of thermodynamics says that the universe tends toward disorder, right?
Yes.
So to me, that idea extends to absolutely everything that exists in this universe, whether it be, the sort of the centeredness of our psyche and our lives, or our hall closet. The universe tends toward disorder. And so if left alone, things will not move in a positive and productive direction. They will move toward disorder. And in order to keep things moving in the right direction, we have to expend energy in that direction. Anytime we're not expending effort to keep anything moving forward, then the second law of thermodynamics says it's moving backward.
Uh-huh.
And so, I tell voice students all the time, you are in a voice studio that espouses the Lowe's theory, which is never stop improving. Sorry for the ad placement. But anyway, never stop improving. And so, on the subject of coming out, it's a process that I feel I have embarked on and will continue to engage for the rest of my life. Because it's not just about saying to someone, I'm LGBTQIA+. It's about identifying and then living in that truth. It's about fighting the stereotypes for any identity. Let's just take a second to acknowledge the difference between orientation and sexuality. Two different things. Orientation being an identity, sexuality being a practice. And they are, of course, related, but they're also distinct. And so, there are stereotypes for everyone. There's stereotypes for straight people. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I feel that for the rest of my life, it is one, choosing, and that's a choice I get to make, who has earned the right and the privilege of knowing this about me, right? And I realize, venues like this program mean that people that I may not choose will know these things about me, and that's okay. I chose that. That's why I'm here. But the people in my circles, there are people who haven't earned hearing that from me, and so they won't. To me, it's kind of a sacred thing in my life. And we all feel differently about it, and we all, go about it different ways. But for me, that's just, I'm a very private person. I'm kind of right on the line, if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, between introvert and extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life, I've tested INFJ, and then I recently retook the test, and I tested ENFJ. So I don't know if that's just, cultural influences on my life, or who knows. But you have to put the psychology.
I know. I was like, here you go again. You're just going to get me to put that hat back on. No, I mean, it depends. For those at home who are curious about the Myers-Briggs personality, that's introvert, extrovert, and then all the extra letters that go into that. It depends on the day. You might have done something that had you a little bit more extroverted than normal, and you might have been feeling that. The big thing, that I talk about, at least, it's funny, we're getting into introvert and extrovert things, but the thing I always talk about of how we conceptually don't understand that very well is we instantly think, I like being around people. That's what we boil the concept down to, but that's actually wrong.
Right.
It's about your energy. It's about what you are feeling when you're around people. And me being an introvert consistently, believe it or not, folks, I am. I'm exhausted.
I believe that.
Yeah, I'm exhausted at the end of the day whenever I'm around people, and I have to have quiet time. Extroverted people, I have a couple of cousins that are very extroverted, and if they're in a quiet house with me and I am loving it, I'm just like, oh, this is so nice. They're going nuts. They are clawing the walls like, I can't stand this. There's nothing going on. Talk to me. What's happening? It's just energy levels. Me, I'm calm, but for them, it's like, so that's the concept. There you go, folks, watching this episode today. You learned about that concept, is that we frame it a little bit off.
I always say introverts get energized by solitude.
So nice.
Energized by being around people, and maybe even by a little bit of sort of commotion, or what I, as an introvert, call chaos. But
there are introverted people that absolutely love their, being around their friends and having that time with people for this, as you talked about at the beginning, having that really important social interaction. But there's a limit to it. It's okay, I've reached my threshold. I'm overburdened. I need to go. Extroverts are like, keep it coming. It's very different in that regard as far as it goes. But back on coming out, it's a continual process, and a thing that I tell people all the time is that with my career and what I do, and having the opportunity to interview amazing people like yourself, and to be on YouTube and do these videos for UMSL, and being an LGBTQ coordinator, I chose this career. I am gay on display, or the acronym is GOD, but gay on display. By choice, because I am comfortable advocating for myself, but also other people. And I love educating people about our community, but that's not the default setting for the rest of our community, because not everyone else is comfortable doing that. Not everyone else wants to do that. They don't want to wake up and explain to you, LGBTQ. They're like, can you go Wikipedia that, or can you call Harry Hawkins or somebody? He'll be glad to talk to you about that. So I always say to folks, especially our allies out in the community, and many of you are great about this, but that like the education has to come from yourself. Go to trusted sources, but educate yourself. Don't always rely on your LGBTQ friends or colleagues to do that education for you. Some of us love doing that, but then the majority of us are just like, look, I'm an accountant and I like numbers.
Yeah.
LGBTQ is part of who I am, but you got a spreadsheet you need me to look at, like what you need. So it's understanding that dynamic as well. So yeah.
As every one of us is. And, I feel that we will occasionally, I can relate to this fairly recently, we will have people in our lives who will try to tell us what our process should be. And they don't have it right. And we should, it's part of knowing who we are and living our truth to identify how we want our process to be, and then to live that. Not to allow anyone to bully us into coming out to people we don't want to, or manipulating us based on who we have and haven't come out to. I just felt the need to say that.
No, that's very important, and it's always a fun little nugget I give people is that whenever you have someone trying to like push your process, as I call it, or really determining what your process is, then you like turn it around and you're like, okay, well, I want to come over and repaint all of the inside of your house. Is that okay? Or actually, I'm not even asking you, is that okay? I'm just going to show up and I'm going to paint it some colors. Good. Glad we talked about that. See you tomorrow. And then you see what their reaction is, and you're like, So that's kind of exactly how you're interacting with me right now. Of course, not to boil down anyone's identity to painting a house, but it has an effect of getting someone to reframe their thinking. So, Jon, what drew you to music?
What drew me to music? My mother. It's a very easy answer. When I was 4 years old, my mother signed me up for piano lessons, and she, bless her heart, sat down with me at the piano and made me practice the piano for a solid hour every day when I was 4. And I hated it. I kicked and screamed, and I have proof, Harry, because somewhere in my little box of mementos from childhood, I have a cassette tape that she recorded of her making me practice piano one day. And now you got to remember too that the boot heel is the South.
Yeah.
When I was a little baby, I talked like this.
Yep.
Well, so it's little 4-year-old me in that accent going, Mama, I don't want to practice anymore. It was bad. But anyway, so, no, but I hated it then. And, 4 years later, my parents divorced and things weren't exactly consistent. But by the time I got to college, I began college at UMSL in 1988. That all of those sort of years being in and out of formal study and just sort of with it being in the background on the back burner turned into really what's become a lifelong passion. So it all began with piano, but at UM St. Louis, I had the amazing privilege of studying with Evelyn Mitchell, and I got to study for a couple of semesters voice with Dr. Mark Madsen, both of whom have passed away, and I miss them both dearly. But they were such influences on my life, one in the realm of piano, the other in the realm of voice. And as it turns out, I've actually performed more professionally as a singer here in town with Union Avenue Opera and Winter Opera, and then as a worship leader in those church circles. But yeah, I'm really thankful that it's all sort of produced a nice, well-rounded musical aptitude in me. And then my years of doing technical direction at that church have also given me some really great, well-rounded technical skills, production skills. So I'm really thankful for all of that. I love a little story that I have about Miss Mitchell. When I auditioned for her I can't even remember, it was the music building, you know, that has the little chapel in it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
On the second floor, I walked into her office and I played this piece that most people would probably play in third grade. And I played this piece, and she says in this very thick Austrian accent, "You love music, don't you?" And that's all she could say to me after my audition. But she took me into her studio, and that woman turned my life around. So I'm
Wow.
so thankful for that.
Oh, wow. I mean, this is just a good story. And the music building, one thing, at least with UMSL, is that it is being torn down. Um, Starting soon. Yep, because it's now the department's moved to another location. But yeah,
Right.
good memories and good times for sure. But yeah, I know. I hope maybe if the chancellor watches this episode, it's like, hey, we have a memory from that building. So,
Yeah, cool. I tell you that I had some of the best experiences of my life in that building. Dr. Leonard Ott was the music chair at the time, and all of the teachers that I got to study with there, it just changed my life. And the really wonderful thing is, and this isn't disparaging in any way of how the program was then, but the wonderful thing is, it is 1,000 times the program today that it was then in the
mm,
late early 90s. And that's a testament to UM St. Louis's commitment to never stopping improving.
we transform lives. See, I got it in. That'll be in my next paycheck. But we do, and we have a wonderful music program. It's so good. So one question I was thinking about just in our conversation, John, and earlier you were talking about like performing, and right now what that looks like in COVID, and just hearing you talk about music and that passion for music is. And this is my understanding as someone who is not in music, is that it seems like there's two parts to that passion. There's the actual composing and then the performing of getting that satisfaction of people hearing your work and enjoying it and being emotionally moved. How is that? How are musicians and how are folks that are musically gifted coping with that right now? Because you don't get that instant satisfaction when you're performing. Or
Yeah,
maybe you do.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Or I was like, or maybe you do. I don't know.
You know, I feel that we do. However, it's um, it's in a different context. It feels different on one hand. On the other, I feel that we've kind of been forced into a cocoon, if you will,
Mm,
and lots of metaphors there, but sort of forced into this zone where those of us who are passionate about what we do, and you know, for whom the performing arts is a calling, we're in a zone where we're being forced to be more introspective about our art. Some of us are able to just find some different creative flow. And I feel that in a way, we're either figuring out new creative ways to connect with our audience, or we are building a bit of a stockpile so that when things return to normal, I feel there's going to be an explosion.
mm,
Um, and I think both of those things are, like we talked earlier, really wonderful, beautiful potential outcomes of this terrible situation we're all in,
mm.
right? So GMC, for example, is is really striving to find some innovative ways to connect with our audiences. At the end of the day, Harry, you mentioned sort of composing and then performing as two of the big buckets. They are, but there are so many shades before composing, through crafting and producing, and then performing. And then the ultimate goal is connection. connection with, our audience. And from inception, that spark of creativity, that inspiration, to connecting with the audience, that's a continuum. And we all sort of, we resonate with different swaths of that creative process, right? I currently am reconnecting with that inspiration composing part of my creative process, forced by a situation with the pandemic. And that is, GMC is currently looking at having to stream at least one, maybe two, maybe three concerts. Well, the licensing fees for using copyrighted music in that format become prohibitively expensive for, a group our size. And so that has forced us into trying to create some original content. I have to admit, at the beginning of it, I was kicking and screaming because it's not something that comes so easily to me as, working with a group of singers and, helping to mold that energy. But it is a part of my aptitudes. And so I said, okay, we'll do this. And now we're in the process and I'm loving it again. So, I feel that the process, no one person can have all of the aptitudes for the entire process. I guess I shouldn't say no one person. There are people out there who can and do, and God bless them. I'm not one of them. I think most of us aren't, but they're out there. But for, I think, most of us in the performing arts, it's finding our niche, finding the things that resonate with us, that feel like they come easily to us. There are aptitudes, or there are skills that we've developed so that they become easier to us. And then we play our part in that creative process.
Yeah, so in your work with vocal pedagogy, you have an emphasis on transgender voice, and I think that's a very unique thing in the community that many of us don't have knowledge about or even think about, that goes on. So tell us more about this work, because I just don't think many people have thought through that specific subject.
Yeah, you might be surprised. When I was doing my master's work in pedagogy, that's a subject that began to interest me and resonate with me. I had some close personal contacts with transgender singers, and many transgender people really struggle. They live in a lot of conflict about that part of who they are, because your voice is like your face. It's a huge, significant part of your identity, and the transitioning vocally is just as important as transitioning other physical aspects of your body, the way that you carry yourself, all of these things. And that's not to say that it's a spectrum. Not all transgender folk have to, work on technically on things like how they carry themselves or their intonation. But anyway, it became an area of interest. But you may be surprised, there's actually a significant amount of research already in scholarly journals about this area of helping transgender singers with their vocal transition as well. Sadly, the female to male transition is much more problematic than the male to female transition vocally, just because of the way the vocal apparatus transitions through puberty, physically in the body, the way that our bodies react to hormones and physiological factors makes the transition much easier and more seamless for male to female transgender folk than for female to male. So some of my real landmark, exemplary voice students have been those female to male transgender folk who have made significant strides in some of those problem areas. One of the most significant problems in female to male transgender people is that the middle part of the voice, where the voice cracks or breaks, that break can become large in transition. And so, through hormone therapy, the low end develops nicely, but then there's this gap in the middle that we have to figure out how to help the higher voice meet the lower voice. And so that's become a real passion of mine. But yeah, I absolutely love it because it is, I feel that it's such a central component of our identity. And even if someone doesn't necessarily want to sing, just helping them to feel at ease and as though they have integrity in the way that they sound and the way they communicate, that can change someone's life. So that's why it's a passion for me.
It's an interesting subject, and I just think it's something that not many people may know about or have thought about it. So to hear more about it and know that there's a lot of research out there makes me happy. I'm like, oh, good. I'm glad that there is a lot of research. It's a very interesting topic.
It is. It truly is, because it's another, I was going to say another little way, but it's actually another significant way that we can help one another to figure out how to live our lives with integrity and confidence and feel centered and whole as human beings.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, and you've touched on this earlier, but you are currently the artistic director of Gateway Men's Chorus, where I also serve as the vice president of the board. How have you all adapted to this current environment, and what all do you have planned for this upcoming season?
Sure. So we adapted as soon as quarantine began. We shifted from in-person rehearsals where we were having 40 to 45 singers every night in this room, which, that's one of the things that I miss most. It's being able to walk around the room and just give the guys a hug and genuinely ask how their day was, or hear, let them share a joy or share something challenging that they're going through. That connection, I truly, genuinely care about every one of these singers because we're all linking arms and joining in a mission. So, but that's one of the things I miss the most. And the other thing is hearing all those voices in this room. If you can kind of probably hear it on the recording, but there's a really beautiful sort of reverb in this room. It's just an amazing place to sing and to rehearse. So yeah, if I could, I would make this my living room. But anyway, I'm thinking about moving a couch up here though. But anyway, don't tell the Arts and Education Council. Just kidding. But no, so we immediately shifted to Zoom rehearsals. And Zoom rehearsals are really weird for music ensembles because of the difference in lag time between everyone's internet connections and their own equipment that they have at home and so on. We cannot make music together. This is a well-known fact now. But so in order to do that, but to still bring value to the process, we came up with this system where the singers at home will mute themselves so that all they hear at home is their own voice in their room and me singing their part and playing the piano. What another director in our network called this was forced simultaneous practice. And that's exactly what it becomes. Yeah. I'm just helping them through their own private practice session. But we can't really work on ensemble. So we But the value was we were able to keep the music fresh. They could still unmute themselves at any time to ask me a question or ask me to repeat something, ask for clarification. It was very interactive in those ways. We just couldn't hear one another or feel that energy from one another. So we as a group decided not to take our usual summer break, but to continue those Zoom rehearsals. And we had more than half of the chorus stayed committed to those Zoom rehearsals through the summer, which would have been a break for them. And then we just last night, so Monday, September 14th, started hybrid rehearsals for our, I'm calling historic, 34th season with the men's chorus. And so the way the hybrid rehearsals work, we feel that things with the COVID situation have evolved to the point where using lots and lots of safety measures, we can minimize the risk to a level that is tolerable for some of our members. And we have given every single one of our singing members the knowledge, and then we've empowered them to make a choice for themselves as to whether or not they would like to participate in these small COVID-adapted rehearsals or to remain Zoom only, which I'm lovingly calling those singers Zoomers, which I know is the name for Gen Z people, but anyway, I'm gonna call them Zoomers anyway.
It works.
Yeah, but the really amazing thing is, so we bring 12 singers in, 3 from each of the 4 parts. We actually get to hear a blended, mixed tenor, tenor, bass, bass sound, which we've not been able to do since March. Those singers are broadcast over Zoom to the rest of the choir at home. So now the Zoomers at home don't have to just listen to one guy playing a piano and singing, but they get to hear that mixed sound again, and they get to feel like they're part of a bigger group again. And so that is, I'm so excited about that idea for helping us feel like we're a group and we're making music together again. I'll be scheduling different singers because we have more than 24 who want to do the in-person rehearsals. So they'll have to rotate through the in-person. Anytime they're not in person, they will join us by Zoom. We're doing short rehearsals, wearing masks the whole time, a 30-minute break in between to circulate air and disinfect everything. And you know, we feel that we're doing everything that we possibly can to minimize the risk, and we're just fingers crossed that that everyone stays safe. We also have a plan in the event that one of our members does test positive for COVID and all of that stuff. So I really hope it never comes to that, but we thankfully, and you are a huge part of this. Thankfully, the board has adopted a really well thought plan and procedure, and I and the vast majority of the chorus feel very safe in these new environments. So as far as looking forward to the season, as I mentioned before, we are programming public domain or original content for at least the first 2 concerts of our season. And we're looking for underwriting currently for our 3rd concert because we'd really like to do a program that we had planned last March. We're planning to do that material this coming June.
When is your first concert?
Our first concert will be our holiday concert. It'll be in December. It will be streamed, most likely. We haven't decided yet. We're going to have to sort of check out the COVID scenario at the time, but we haven't decided if we'll be recording that all together and broadcasting it, or if we're going to embark on the biggest virtual choir project this choir has ever seen. So one way or the other, though, we will be streaming a ticketed concert for the holiday in December. Our next concert will then be in March. and that will be a tribute to those who've served in the armed forces and the discrimination that they have to endure. And then our final concert of the season will be in June. Oh my gosh, I hope that can be in person, but you know, who knows? But that's the concert that we had actually planned last March, a program that we're adapting. It was a concert called Pride and Prejudice, which was to sort of look at the prejudices within and from outside the community. But we've adapted it. We adapted it first into sort of a comeback concert for September. We postponed that as well due to the COVID situation. So we're hoping that maybe we can adapt that program once more and do it next June as a real comeback concert. But for comparison, you know, we looked at streaming that concert last March. The additional licensing for streaming the material that we planned in that concert was $6,000.
Really expensive.
For an organization like us, that's not feasible. And so that's why, you know, it's not that we don't want to support composers and arrangers and labels.
Right.
We have a finite amount of resources at this period in time, and $6,000 in sync licensing is what it's called, is not feasible for us. So we're looking at original content and public domain, and you know, we'll get back, but
it's going to be an interesting year, and I know that it's going to be awesome, y'all. I've worked so hard to get this thing off the ground. So in our final moments, Jon, what advice would you give to anyone watching or someone in the boot heel who's saying, "Mama, I don't want to play any more music," that wants to grow up and be like you? What advice would you give them?
Oh my goodness. Don't be like me, be better than me. But seriously, you know, I mean, I say that in jest. No one's perfect. We're all our own worst critics. But the thing that you need to know is that there are wonderful, unique things about every single one of us. And so I guess, what advice would I give someone, you know, who wants to sort of follow this path? There are a few different things. One of the first one has nothing to do with music, and that is be yourself, no matter what that is. I recently watched, Drag Race Canada. And one of the, I won't spoil it, but one of the things that the person who won said to their younger self was, "Be gay!"
Let's do it. Yeah.
Don't wait, don't hide. Be who you are. If that is straight or LGBTQ, IA+, it doesn't matter. Be who you are. Don't hide for a second. Secondly, surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. You notice I didn't say surround yourself with people who will tell you just the good things about you, right?
Right.
People who will tell you the truth. I just yesterday had a dear friend call me on the carpet about something that my eyes were just blinded to because of the situation I'm going through. And she said it through tears, but I went, "You're right. What a fool I've become." And in 24 hours, I completely changed the way that I behave on this particular subject. We need people in our lives who aren't afraid to tell us the truth, no matter if it's a negative truth or which should result in constructive, or if it's all the wonderful things about us. So surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. And then I think the other thing is embrace discipline. I don't care what you feel about your own self-discipline. There are tools and there are strategies and there are ways for you to put in the kind of hard work that is required to achieve excellence. Okay, we all have natural giftings and abilities. Those things don't really require a lot of work in order to be good. But I don't care how talented you are, without hard work, those abilities will remain raw instead of refined. Hard work is not optional. And so find something within yourself that can embrace, the ability to put in the work to refine those natural giftings that are in you.
Absolutely.
So I guess last thing is don't take no for an answer.
There you go. No's just the beginning. That's right. You can get your way to yes. Absolutely. Great advice, as always, from Jon. And anyone who's watched the series knows that at the very end, I throw out a curveball question. I throw out something that you didn't know that I'm going to ask. So, and I like to stir the pot.
Harry.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So a question that I have for you, Jon, who is the most overrated composer?
Overrated?
Yeah, just overrated. They're like, but people get a little too excited about them.
Man.
I love these questions.
Question. This isn't fair. I don't really know how to answer that. You know what? I would answer it this way, actually.
Okay.
No one is everyone's cup of tea, right? And opinions are just opinions. I mean, I know that I should probably answer the question in a funny way, but I don't know. I'm just not. I'm not smart enough for that. But it actually brings up a really important truth, and that is, and maybe this is another little bit of advice for someone who wants to follow this path, and that is, there's always going to be haters, and what we do is never going to resonate with 100% of the people. What other people think is so much less important than your own knowledge that you're being true to that inspiration that's in you. So, to the composers that are overrated, I just say, you be you.
So let's turn this around really quickly. Who's your favorite composer?
Oh man, there are lots, but
You have to pick one.
this is going to be a cliche answer, but the one composer who I've been obsessed with since I was 4 years old, back in the boot heel, was Ludwig van Beethoven. I know it's cliche, but I have dedicated hours and hours and hours of my life to that person. And I've done it because his music resonates. I identify with him on personal levels, but his music does this to me. So he's my guy.
He's a classic. He is a classic, yes. I know. Well, Jon Garrett is a composer, recording artist, and artistic director at the Gateway Men's Chorus right here in St. Louis. Jon, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been so much fun.
Absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Rainbow Talks here at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Once again, I am your host, Harry Hawkins, the LGBTQ plus coordinator. Stay safe, stay sane, and know that you are loved. And we will see you next time.